I know that you've all been prepared for this, but I thought I'd just remind you just the same.
Can you handle that, Blondie?
Game over, man. Game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
It was pure evil.
I want to buy some radio ad time.
Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Vincent Green.
And I'm your host, Noel John Toohey.
And we got Cara Mack in the back. This is Invasion of the Potty Snatchers. Let's get to it, motherfuckers.
You Jigsaw it here first.
Hey, would you like to play a game? So no, we're back, and this time we're taking a look at the Saw franchise, but not just only the Saw franchise, the last two installments, Jigsaw and the latest Chris Rock led Spiral from a Book of Saw. And then we're also going to take a little look at the subgenre of torture porn itself, and pretty much where it came from, what were the mainstays of it, and then kind of what's the cultural impact it's had over the past 10, 20 years or whatever. And the reason we're going to take a look at, we'll probably keep the Saw franchise itself, maybe for a Franchise Friday, but the reason we're going to take a look at the latest two iterations is because we kind of want to look at how this franchise how did we get here? Yeah, how did we get here? 9 movies in or whatever. But we just kind of want to look at the attempts to revitalize this kind of dying franchise, you know, like 10 years after the fact from the original, I think, or from John Kramer's death in part 2 or 3, we had Jigsaw come out, and then later on we had this kind of offshoot Spiral from the Book of Saw, as I mentioned, with Chris Rock, that was kind of set within the Saw verse, if there's such a thing, but it wasn't really Jigsaw, it was more Jigsaw adjacent kind of thing. Like, so Noel, what did you make of Jigsaw first? So let's just kind of rewind a little bit. Were you a big fan of the Saw franchise, and what were your expectations like for Jigsaw when it was coming out initially?
Okay, I guess the whole thing is you have to answer honestly here, and I was not. I thought Saw lost its way very quickly. I thought eventually the people who were dead weren't dead, and the person that was good was bad, and the person who was bad was good, and I instantly knew that I thought they had bled it so much by the time we got to this stage.
Yeah.
I watched Jigsaw a couple of months ago for the first time, and I watched it again in the last 48 hours, just over 24 hours ago, and I have no idea why any of them were in those traps. I was just like, the level of intricacy per trap per movie, the way it scales up is almost when you watch. I watched the first one as well because I remember really liking the first one, and I needed a frame of reference. And while it was, you had to suspend your disbelief, like you would a Die Hard, like you would in any film that any one person could pull off such a feat. Yeah, it was still just grounded in something. Like if you were clever enough about what you knew and how you knew it and how smart you were, and he was an engineer and all this, but it got, you know, we got like laser scalpels, and we got like that thing where the guy dangles over the motorbike / spiraling blades, and it was just like,
man, if you look at Saw, hasn't it, like the way it has grown and the way it's expanded and how complicated it's become, is kind of like Fast and Furious of horror.
Yes. Excellently
Isn't it though, like,
a tip of my cap indeed. I think that's
it just dawned on me, like, because you were like naming out all these little things. I'm like, from the first movie, it's two guys in a room, like we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely, yeah. And then I watched it again, and it was actually more like Donnie
Wahlberg. Donald Wahlberg. Donald Glover. Danny Wahlberg's in the sequel.
Yeah, Donald Glover's storyline was a little bit more, you know, but it was just grounded in something that could you imagine someone could do. Just in the darkest recesses of your mind, if someone was actually...
It doesn't take a lot to drug two people and chain them up in a room.
No, exactly, yeah.
I've done it several times.
I've done it, trust me, I know.
Just like the Saw franchise, but...
Just like... But I just thought it got so, like, it got so out of hand that eventually, again, it's called torture porn. And you know when you're like, when you're watching porn, you're like, yeah, this scenario where the guy's going door to door selling bananas or whatever the fucking case may be, and he ends up having sex with the wife whose husband's away, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm not going to get bogged down the story. Can we get to the sex? Because that's why I'm here. It's why the torture porn, it's why those two words work so well for me, because it has actual torture, and porn is when we get to the good stuff, and that is, nobody cares cares about the story. It just became so...
Yeah.
You know, I was watching it was like, oh, but this guy, but he did this and he worked in insurance, this, and he actually knew, or he ignored, because that's another big thing. There's that
oh my God. Like in Jigsaw, he was like, "Oh, hey, dude, do you know the way I just ran?" I was like, "Last second, dude, do you know the way I nearly just ran you into a saw?" Well, I kind of did run you into a saw, but I was like, "You made an honest mistake. My bad."
Yeah, so
now
I retracted the saw. Yeah, exactly.
Like he's like,
you
didn't. Yeah. So like he made one mistake, like a mistake that anybody could have made. That he accidentally put John Kramer's name on a wrong X-ray, and vice versa.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
But like at the same time,
completely understandable.
Not tortured to death.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, you know. And unfortunately, people like me make mistakes in my work at the time, and something gets mislabeled, and somebody goes, "Sorry, you mislabeled that," and I'll go, "Oh shit, sorry."
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. And then somebody who's higher up the pecking order would mislabel something, and something terrible can happen, and that is the responsibility that comes with it. I get it, but at the same time, yeah, it didn't always back itself up into the moral high ground. And he always like, it was. Do you remember even just had this whole, what I'm giving them is a chance. I was like, are you? Because I have to like. Do you remember the saw trap where it was two people and whoever could chop off the most flesh and throw it into the machine? Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm giving them a chance. Giving them a chance what? Like, what? You're giving me a minute to, like, chop off. Like, I have to, A, be responsible for someone being murdered, and B, maim myself horrifically. This isn't, like, you're not on the moral high ground here, dude. Like, you know?
Yeah, like, that's one thing I thought about Saw was when I looked through the franchise, I think I rewatched it over a year ago, the entire franchise before Spiral came out. And me and Lorraine watched it back. And one thing I noticed about it was not only is it the most retroactive horror franchise out there, which a lot of them are, but I think it suffered hugely from a sense of regret at killing John Kramer off so early in its run.
Do you think?
Yeah. I'm just like, I throw softballs. I'm tired.
You're so introspective.
That's what I do. What I do is I
no, but it is obviously. Did he die in 3? Was it 3 that he was actually dead?
He dies in 3. Yeah, in 3.
He dies in 3, and it just, of course, you had like, oh, well, I worked under John Kramer, or John Kramer saved my life, or just before John Kramer died, he sent me a message.
Oh my God! Yeah, like it's like that because it becomes so tenuous that these linkages towards the original antagonist John Kramer, that when you get like to a Jigsaw and the dude is like, oh yeah, I swapped your fucking name around by accident. And he's like, you're bad, but I can understand why you did it, even though I just ran you through a buzzsaw. But what I'm going to do is your reward is now you're going to be my murderer's protege, and you're going to help me kill lots and lots of people. And they were
lots of people, despite the fact that you're a literal doctor.
Yeah, you know what I mean. And they're like, so what we're going to do is, I think they were like, so their hope was, let's pin the back of the franchise rebirth or reboot on the back of this new character. So we're going to have to give him a direct linkage to the beginning of Jigsaw. Because if he was there at the outset with John Kramer, then he was equal into his maniacal planning powers or whatever. That he had the same, because everybody, as we mentioned, it was like, John Kramer saved my life. John Kramer's my second cousin. John Kramer's second cousin's daughter mowed my lawn. You know what I mean? So like, I think they're like, okay, we can't have these tenuous links, so we're going to have a guy that's back at the origin of John Kramer. And because they're constantly retconning things, they've actually just fucking ruined the franchise.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. I had to watch. I wanted to come on here, know my shit, and be able to talk it. And I watched Jigsaw, and I'm sorry, Vin, you cannot make me care. You can't put me under. You can't make me care. You can't. I've watched even terrible movies just to come on here and do this podcast happily. And you're just kind of like, wow, this is just a shit. But I just remember just kind of going, get to the bit where they all get chopped up. That was all I wanted. Again, it felt like, hi, is your husband home? It just felt like I had this big sausage pizza. Yeah. That's all the storyline the Saw became. And it was so... it ruins itself. And in fact, it got so bad that it can retroactively make good movies bad. Yeah, and that takes a special type of bad.
Good work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because then it becomes canon for John Kramer. And then John Kramer becomes this instead of an absolute wronged genius,
super.
He becomes so absolutely silly and outlandish, and like a Smallville villain or something. You know what I mean? Albeit with much more violence.
Trapper.
Condiment King or something. But it just gets so silly.
Humor man, too much.
No.
Oh, it's melanoma, man.
I'm afraid someone's cancered my subscription.
Oh my god, Jesus. Oh god, that might be terminal for our ratings.
They say 1 in 3, so I'm hoping it's Carol, because we're really coming for the karma here. But do you do find that when you were watching that last, like actually, this is why I think Spiral disappointed me more, because another 2 movies that we want to talk about is that Spiral was supposed to be a fresh take, like in the universe of Saw, that somebody would take inspiration from John Kramer's gone.
Saw.
He's gone. Yeah, exactly, from the book of Saw. But that's the thing with Spiral. You were just like, oh, we get it. You have, and it was a literal for me, it was like a haunted house, like a murder house. But it was just full of traps. Like, it was this huge scale, and really overtly over the top traps. Yeah. And then I was just, but I didn't care. I just liked, the guy's foot's gone through the floor, and now this like tall piano wire. That's cool.
That was cool. That's doable as well.
It's doable.
It's doable. Yeah. That's what I like about the earlier movies, because some of this shit is doable. Like, you know what I mean? Like some of the shit that some of these people have to do to hook these, like that fucking thing with the blender thing, where the dude's you sold a motorbike to a boy, and he didn't tell him it was broken, and he died, and that boy was my nephew. Now I'm going to put you in a blender that's run by the same motorcycle motor that killed my nephew. And I'm like, dude, how long did it take you to plan this?
Movie idea, and it's literally just
one trap.
Nobody gets killed in it. It's just somebody setting up the song. Just somebody actually having to source the motorbike.
Yeah,
that's been sold like twice.
He's on Craigslist. No, that's not it.
It's on Craigslist.
That's not it. 50 cc's. No,
just like the whole film's a montage, and it's just like you have to put in the spiral tornado of blades that he gets put through. Like, oh my god!
Hell, it's so terrible.
And especially, it speaks to the whole how
preparation from the Book of Saw.
Of course. Well, at some point, you've thought, if anyone laid hands on my daughter, if anyone laid hands on my girlfriend, of course you've had those thoughts.
Set the world on fire. Yeah,
you'd set the world on fire, and this one takes that to the actual degree of. But the thing is, you don't go in like a Hulk. You go in like a surgeon.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and it reminds me of the Riddler in the 1995 Batman Forever. We can't kill him because he won't learn nothing.
But you know,
you have to.
I just think though, if I'm in a situation like that, I'm not setting up these like maniacal traps. I'm taking you, and I'm bringing you to the middle of nowhere, and I'm going to have a day with you. And you're not going to leave that place, and no one's ever going to find you. Well, I'm not going to set up a trap or reverse bear traps or dangle from the ceiling. Yeah, there will be knives involved, and I will use them gratuitously.
I just play tape, and you just play tape. Before you is a shovel. I'm going to hit you with the shovel. You just beat him with a shovel that you're going to dig his fucking grave with. That's it,
No, I'll make him dig his own grave first. I'm not getting going.
Imagine if you had to you had to go to a scrapyard or something. Go, what are you looking for? And he goes, it's going to sound a bit weird, but I need 5 buzz saws, a motorcycle engine. It's a bit of a suspicious thing.
I'm thinking of 2.5 tons of aluminium. I want to build it. I'm thinking something that can be made into a spherical, like a 20-foot blender. See, I want to do an alternate power source. My power source, you ask. Good question. See, what happened was my nephew, he was so.
Look, this isn't that kind of scrap dealers. I'm not going to sell you that. 5 years ago, you told somebody that a Honda Mazda was only worth 50 quid. Don't forget that you actually have to source everyone's
Could you
dark
imagine
secrets
one guy,
as well.
he's just there, and he's just like, he's getting in a taxi, and he's like, dude, you catch the next one. He gets in. 14 years ago, you got a taxi.
And that was my first victim that I in fact didn't kill. That became my protege.
Yeah, now this 60-foot taxi is ran on an invention powered by hatred.
I imagine it goes so far that it just goes to like a butterfly. He goes, "You flapped your wings."
You landed on my scone, mad Sardine.
Setting in motion a chain of events. An actual butterfly inside the soundtrack.
Exactly. Imagine it's like 8 years later, I got a tumor. You tell me, was it linked to you landing on my scone, butterfly? You tell me, butterfly. You tell me. You can't tell my wife because she's dead.
You use your wings to fly, but what would you use?
So, butterfly, you were once a caterpillar that cocooned itself.
What's the name of the actor that played Kramer?
Toby Jones or something like
Thank
that. No, it's Toby something. Tobin something. You continue and I'll check if you want.
Yeah, but he was at some point, because he was so good in it, you know, like game over, like in the first film. But he, like, don't get me wrong, this is how he made his name, and obviously he didn't become as big as he was during the Saw franchise earlier in his career. So it was a bit of a late bloomer, and that's absolutely fine. He's 79 now.
Yeah,
but he's
been around for the same length as the Saw franchise.
Same length of that last Saw movie.
79
but at the same time,
years.
You must just kind of himself at some point realize, like, it starts becoming a paycheck.
Yeah,
100%. You know, it starts because there's definitely no doubt in my mind, and I'm not trying to put words in the man's mouth. He's never said anything.
Yeah, because if he did, like, he'd come out for you, like
this is not. Yeah, but you know, he made an awful lot of money, and I'm glad for him because he was one of the best things about it. He's a great actor, and he delivered.
5 years now, Noel wakes up in a warehouse. 5 years ago in a podcast. But isn't he like a remark? But to me, it was not a passing remark. To me, it was the gravest of insults. And now, Mr. Talky Talk Man, you like to talk into microphones. Now you're going to cook to death in this tiny 60-foot microphone.
Unless you can get your audio down to zero. Yeah. But like, it was. But like, I mean, sorry, I looked up his name there, and I've Doug Bradley of Pinhead. There's no doubt to me that Doug Bradley just at some stage was showing up for Hellraiser 5 or something. Went, this is so fucking stupid.
He's like, I got such eyes to show you, or whatever, paycheck.
Exactly. And there's no doubt that, and again, this is a conversation that we've had. It keeps coming back, and it's just like the actor, the character versus the script, and we often put it on the actor.
Yeah.
And eventually he was just like, well, this was my job. Like, I had to show up, and I did the best job I could with these words.
If you give me
in
a
this room,
shit, the best
holding
I could
this,
do was make shit sandwich.
Yeah, exactly, and that was it. And eventually he kept coming back. And I remember the Saw as starting out was like, fuck, that was cool, and I was looking forward to the second Saw. I even thought the second Saw just lost its sight pretty much straight away.
I'm not going to lie, I went to see the second Saw at the end of a really hard day's working, and I was after drinking all evening, and I fell asleep during the entire movie. Very much. I saw when they got to the house, woke up, and I was like, what's going on? But he's like, dude, I ate your popcorn. You fell asleep during the movie. I was like, well, good cause.
But it just, again, it suffered from that thing that ties into something that we talked about in a previous podcast, and that was like how people are looking towards foreign films and stuff for sources of entertainment, because they're just like, they take something that works, like Paranormal Activity, and they'll say, wow, okay, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
Shit, how do we get 9 of those?
9 of those in the next 9 years.
Yeah, 9 of those, 9 years, and you kind of go, and now it's like Paranormal Activity, the beginnings, and it's, you know,
Ghost Dimension, and all this.
And all you have to have is somebody show up and say, what if John Kramer? What if the doc? I have it. What if the doctor? You know, and then somebody goes, right, here's, and it feels like they're not trying. No. And if all the horror franchises I can think of, and there's some doozies, I think Saw is a franchise that, for me, A, tried really hard, and B, didn't try at all.
Yeah,
it was felt a lot of work to be lazy, and I know that's a contradiction, but I don't know what other way to put it.
To me, sometimes the Saw movies kind of feel like they make up the traps and then decide to put the story around them.
Wow, that's not terrible either.
You know what I mean? Like,
but it's what I go for. Again, I don't know what anybody in Spiral. I have to say, I watched, and it was I know what was going on. I know that Chris Rock was hated by his colleagues because he, ratted
Chris
out
Rock joking his way through a serial killer investigation.
Yeah, I know.
And then something I said to you in the group chat was that like, I love how they charted the different timelines through the story with different swigs on Chris Rock. Like, his beard changed, and that's how they charted the different times. Like, and some people use filters, some people throw up words on the screen to say 5 years earlier. But in this movie, in Spiral, there's just like the differences in Chris Rock's swing on his face. It was fucking amazing. And why did he end up with the one on his chin? It was gradually running away from his nose throughout the movie.
Yeah. I love the fact, but you were talking about how they made Samuel L. Jackson his father. No, they made Shaft his father.
Yeah,
You
Shaft.
see when he first comes in, like, and he's got the leather jacket, and they've got a gun drawn on each other. Oh god, that film. I actually think they genuinely tried to make a really good film, and that's what's so tragic about that film. It's like, so bad.
We're going to give this character a backstory, and it's going to be linked to Saw somehow. So we're going to have him be a new character's son. Danny Glover was in part 1. Like, have him be Danny Glover's fucking son. And then immediately you link it back to the original set of Jigsaw cases. How fucking easy that is. And you can have Samuel L. Jackson, something I said to you, he's fucking Danny Glover's brother. And he's
B's captain. It was actually a good captain that looked out for him. That thought of him as a Holt and whatever in fucking Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You can set up a dynamic. It doesn't have to even be familial.
Like a father figure. Like he stepped in when Danny Glover got killed.
Glover's exactly. It can go on, and it was just felt so fucking. And okay, spoiler alert, we're going to absolutely spoil Spiral in 3, 2, 1.
I think they already did that for themselves.
I think they did that for themselves. It's a fucking. But I said, wow, all this shit started going down. So like, you have to look at what's changing in your life. I'd like you to meet your new partner.
Like, I can remember the first.
You could call him the last piece in the puzzle. And what's another word for him?
When I seen that movie first, I was like barely paying attention to it. I was like, I think I might have been doing like up our schedule or something. I was doing something on the laptop while I was watching it, and I was giving it like maybe 50% attention. Like watching it last night was pretty much nearly like watching it for the first time for me.
No, same.
Within about 15, 20 minutes. I did
scope through it the first time.
Within about 15, 20 minutes, I'm like, his new partner's kind of shifty. He's the bad guy. I was like, he's kind of shifty. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't trust him. New partner, all these things are happening. It's kind of like,
and we see everyone die, but the new partner's like tattoo of his Charlie just shows up.
It's kind of like, do you remember in Arrow, where you're like, who's this new vigilante that arrived on the scene exactly when Oliver Queen returned to Star City? I'll hazard a guess. You know what I mean?
That's right. It was me, the person that showed up at the same time.
And you're like, yeah, of course it was. Like, literally, if bad shit started happening to me and a new person just came into my life, and immediately I'd be like, what the fuck's going on with this person? I'd be like scoping them out. Who are they? Who do they know? You know, that kind of thing. Like, and if I'm a cop, I'm doing it tenfold. Like, and Chris Rock's like, oh no, I'm going to tell a joke. And I was like, really, Chris? That guy's head's on 4 pieces. Here's the thing about being a woman. Here's the thing about trusting a woman.
You know, it was.
And do you remember when he's trying to do training day with the dude and they're driving through the streets? And I'm like, God. Oh, come on, guy. Like, you know what I mean? So Chris,
he fought for this. Like, he fought for this movie.
He's like, I'm going to throw 5 different movies into a blender and hopefully a Saw movie comes out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, this is the thing. This is unchecked power. As in, the captain of the precinct gets killed in the evidence room. Slowly. With like wax.
And nobody investigates the new guy.
I counted 5, there might have been 6, where people went into a room knowing that there's someone in there with them, pulled a gun and got taken out by chloroform and a rag. Gun versus chloroform and a rag. 5-0. Or even like how, like you said, like on a busy railway line, How the fuck do you set up a trap?
Railway, like those trains are going non-fucking stop. Like, you know what I mean?
There's probably one every 4 minutes. How do you even get the person up there?
Yeah, like how do you fence the place? Scope it out. Nobody notices you there because those lines are constantly under maintenance as well. Like, so
set up a TV, set up like the tongue trap, like whatever about a warehouse. You know, I can suspend my disbelief.
Imagine that guy was a friend of his when he was in school and he had an ice cream and he just licks his ice cream. 18 years ago, we were in elementary school together and you wasn't in my ice cream. You like licking ice cream? Well, now you can smash on the high-speed train.
You give me a B- when I think that my dissertation about that.
Now watch this swarm of bees devour you from the inside out.
Patent pending movie idea, Petty Saw.
Some guy's like a carpenter, like, you know what I mean? It's like, you dropped a hammer on my toe.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just, it's fucking ridiculous. Like, I just think it got away from this, like, crazed genius.
It became torture porn, man. I mean, it literally became torture porn.
Well, it was torture porn from the get-go. Like, you got reverse bear trap in part 1, don't forget. You got the guy cutting the key out of his eye in part 1.
I'll give you that. There. Yeah, no, I accept that. I accept that as a fact. That's fair.
Like, it's there. It just got worse. Not even worse. I don't like to use that word in terms of gore, but it got more exaggerated. I think that's a better way of describing it, because it's kind of like the earlier Halloweens. It happens to a lot of horror franchises. It's the game of one-upsmanship, you know. It's like, oh, you killed 12 people, I'm going to kill 30. You killed 30 people, I'm going to kill 50. You know, that kind of thing. So I was like, you got a reverse bear trap. Well, I'm going to have 16 reverse bear traps that are 40 feet tall, and everybody that's attached to it are going to explode, and their blood spatter is going to be a reverse bear trap. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like the way the Saw franchise went, though. Like, you know, it's kind of like Fast and the Furious. Oh, you knocked over 50 million heist. Well, our fucking heist is going to be in space. Vin Diesel family. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so it all goes to space.
But Vin, you need to breathe in space. I don't need to breathe when I got family.
I don't need oxygen. You got family. I love the one though where Tim going against Darth Vader.
I absolutely. Again, you asked me with the Saw franchise, and just to bring in a franchise that we're absolutely not here to talk about, and that is Fast and Furious, is that I completely stopped watching that. That just got so silly. I don't know if I think I watched the second one maybe, but then I seen a clip of where Michelle Rodriguez jumps and his car hits her bike midair. She lands on the bonnet and she's fine. And then like
he catches her midair.
Yeah, and then like the Tarzan with a car. Like they grab a vine and they Tarzan with a car. And then she goes, well, that was new. And I was like, that's a movie?
Man, like in all fairness, if I was Dominic Toretto's girlfriend, I would be soaking wet all the time and all the like you know what I mean? Like if some dude is my boyfriend and he is swinging Tarzan style inside his muscle car and just like lays that landing, I'm jumping his bones. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to put it out there.
And not even if you are a woman, you would do that anyway. Just like
I would anyway. Well, Vin Diesel's a handsome man, and we could maybe become Uber Vin. You know, whatever. It's a thing. It's a thing that I talked about. Maybe Uber Green Diesel, whatever. You know what I mean?
Green Diesel is amazing, and it's your new nickname.
Green Diesel.
Green Diesel.
But like, yeah, I just think like it's when you say suspend your disbelief. I can believe a lot of those instances, a lot of those traps in the earlier Saw movies. But but the 20-foot blender, the laser cutters, the fucking dude hanging over a train just to cut his tongue off so he can be taken out. But like a lot of these things are just, it's the kind of thing you would do if you wanted to be caught while you're trying to murder somebody. You know what I mean? Like Ted Bundy and fucking John Wayne Gacy, the son of Sam Dave Berkowitz.
Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Chikatilo, it goes on and on. Yeah.
The reason they were so successful is because of how simplistic their methods were. I've got
crimes of opportunity and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, it's like, well, a lot of the times though, they would hunt their prey. Like, so they would. It seems like a crime of opportunity. But when you actually look at it, they figured out the exact opportunity when to take them. You know what I mean? Like, so, because they are hunting them a lot of the times. But like, I know with Bundy, not to get too off topic, but the sorority house, that's a complete crime of opportunity, because didn't he follow a girl back, and then he went in and like...
went absolutely fucking ballistic.
7 or 8 girls, I think. fucking animal. But like I just think that when you look at how simplistic the methods of real killers are and how sadistic they actually are and how scary they can be when you watch like a true crime documentary, this is the reason why a lot of horror does not actually scare you, because it's so outlandish, it's so exaggerated, it's so like, oh, yes. You need a like one thing about me being trained, but dude, like some of these fucking traps, you need an engineering degree, like I mean a top level engineering degree.
Oh yeah, MIT. Like, yeah. Oh no, absolutely MIT.
It's just like you look at the trap. Probably about 5 guys in the country could make that. You know what I mean? Like, you know, but when a girl goes missing on the street, anybody could have taken her. And then when you find out, oh, there was a guy with her arm, and then even at that, they were able to whittle it down to someone like Ted Bundy. And that's just like one thing. A guy in a yellow Mini, I think it was.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah, so like...
So, don't get me wrong, incompetence happens, bad police report, everything happens. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The incompetence... And again, I know we're talking about fiction, but there was this thing where you just felt like, why even have the story?
Yeah.
Why have Annie's story?
Just call it.
Why even tell us? Why even tell us who these people are? Why not just have a bunch of people with buckets on their head, so we don't even know what their like gender, ethnicity, any of that? Are just buzzsaws, and somebody has to get to the other side of the room because there's a button, and only like 3 out of 5 get with first 3 out of 4, whatever the case may be, and just get on with it, and just have that, just have it like a silent film.
Yeah,
just have nobody talk because everyone's so flurried trying to survive.
And I think I think as well, it became like nearly like an M. Night Shyamalan thing, where it's like anytime they try to pull the rug out from underneath you, you're like, oh yeah, of course.
Actually, having something, it got so ridiculous that not having someone try to pull the rug out from under you would have been pulling the rug out from under you.
Yeah, it's like when M. Night Shyamalan makes a movie that has no twist, like, you know what I mean, which would never happen.
That's what I said. We meant the joke. We meant with God, we are blue in the face making that exact joke, that no twist is the twist.
Yeah, exactly. People won't see it coming.
Just straight, like, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, and it turns out at the end that the bad guy was just awful, just truly awful, and the good guy was just a nice fella, and we're really glad he won. And that would be it. But he can't.
But an M. Night Shyamalan film, that would be like the good guy is actually the bad guy, and the bad guy is the good guy. And guess what? The community that they live in doesn't exist, and it's not 1964. It's actually 21 AD, and they don't live on Earth anymore. They live on the moons of Jupiter. Blah, 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 what a twist! And that's
God is only a concept.
But no. So like we looked at Jigsaw, and we looked at Spiral, and like with Spiral, it was the serious case of. Like, I don't know how much of a horror fan Chris Rock is, but like it kind of came like a case of like someone that observed horror from the outside and were like, I can do this, and maybe they didn't have a real affinity for it. And you know, like I can like paint by numbers. I can paint, but if I look,
apparently it was him meeting somebody at a wedding and saying that he had this idea.
Yeah,
somebody who worked at Lionsgate, and him saying, this guy calling somebody else and saying, stop everything. Chris Rock wants to do a Saw type movie.
On the back of Jordan Peele, his successful comedic actor, becoming.
And he just said, like, "Oh my god, like, isn't this just great?" Because it's literally, I suppose, it's when the star comes to you.
Yeah. And
you kind of go, "Wow, okay, so we've already got a vehicle here where we have the rights to the franchise, and we've got Chris Rock absolutely chomping at the bit. He probably isn't going to take he's probably going to shave a million
Chris Rock
or two.
Just had a divorce, looking for any kind of money he can get.
Yeah, exactly. Just taking the cleaners. But he'll take a producer credit and he'll take a main credit. Probably just not a huge.
He'll take the $18 million.
Yeah, but I was surprised when I remember this being touted and seeing the air of the very previews and stuff, and I thought Chris Rock would probably use this as a vehicle to get away from Chris Rock.
Yeah,
because he can do that. Like, he can. He actually does have an actor in him. I truly believe some kind of actor. He's comfortable. But I didn't know he was going to do a Chris Rock skit.
Yeah,
in the middle of the film.
It's like, I'm going to be jokey and I'm going to have a serial killer and training day and father issues. I'm like, dude, you've got 90 minutes to tell your fucking story. Cut all this shit out. Stop with your jokey bullshit, dude. You want me to take you seriously? You want me to take your story seriously? You need to take it seriously. He
was a cop who ratted out a cop that was killed a witness that was going to speak out against another cop. He was
Just trying to make Chris Rock a gruff cop, like it just didn't. Like it's not believable. Like it just didn't come across. Like maybe Samuel L. Jackson might be in a better as a lead. Chris Rock would direct, and Samuel L. Jackson being the kind of gruff cop. Maybe Danny
modern
Glover
standards, he's aged out of the role. That's all there is to it.
Well, like I'd like to see Samuel L. Jackson do a bit more than throw catchphrases every now and again. You know what I mean?
Like again, this is the thing. This is these are the kind of vehicles that make me lose respect for absolute heroes of mine, because Samuel L. Jackson is just making 15 films a year. I'm just like, I'm the father. I'm your father. And I was
it's like we got
please, Captain.
He's like the new age Marlon Brando.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in way better shape, of course, Samuel.
Way better shape.
You're in way better shape, Samuel. Don't get me wrong.
But like, yeah, there was no craft in the film. I had everything figured out so fucking early, and it's not because I'm smart. It was because it was obvious.
But yeah, exactly. That's the thing, and it was obvious because it's like it's the kind of person. Like as I said, I don't know if Chris Rock's a big horror fan, but to me, it seemed like, oh, a horror should have this, a horror should have this, and should have this and have this, and why? Because that's what I think a horror should have. It's kind of he broke it down like a joke, and he was like, it should have this beat, it should have this beat, not this beat. But he didn't bring over, maybe his love for comedy didn't transfer over to way like in horror, because when he breaks down a joke, he comes up as pure genius a lot of the times. But when he broke down the horror, it was kind of, as I said to you, it kind of felt like paint by numbers. That like a horror movie should have this trope, it should have this trope. Oh, I've seen a horror movie and had this trope. Instead of saying, looking at the franchise and going, okay, how can we reinvent this franchise in a new way for a new audience? And they didn't. They're just like, oh, Saw 4 had something like this, Saw whatever had this and this. And they just like looked at the ingredients of the previous Saws and they're like, okay, what can we take from this? And like, oh, do you know what I like? I was like, what? I like Denzel in Training Day. I'm going to be Denzel in this scene. Okay, great. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, so I just think he had an idea, but maybe he was inspired by a couple of different movies, and he tried to fit all these things and these, like he tried to humanize his character in the same way a lot of the Saws didn't really, like they kind of did with Donnie Wahlberg's character in the previous Saw. I think it was Saw 2 or 3, where he saw a lot with his son and stuff like that. But like when the I don't know, they never took the attention away from the story itself. But this, it felt like that. Like in the exact opposite of many of the other Saws, where the characters were second to the traps and to the murderous nature or whatever's going on in the game Jigsaw's playing.
That's the thing. In the first one, weren't we caught up with the characters? Like, it's something we haven't touched upon, and I'm sorry, and I feel we fucked up. Is that the characters? You remember actually caring?
Yeah.
You remember getting caught up in Amanda's story or in the Doctor's story? I told you this. I watched Spire. I didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But you didn't even care about the game, though. You know what I mean?
No, I didn't even care about the game. And I didn't care about them dying. And so you've got nothing. You've got absolutely no emotional edge in me. But I will give it to you that you have set up quite a show.
Yeah.
For how something.
It's eye candy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the torture porn is, and that's the big enhanced boobs of the thing. You get to see them and you're like, whoa, they're the biggest I've ever seen. You know, like it's got scope, and that's all it has. I think absolutely nothing else.
What the original did was it had this balancing act between character development and the game. And the games that Jigsaw played, but they never distracted from one from the other. Whereas in Jigsaw and the later ones, that it was more about the game than the characters, and you had that disconnect that we talk about, like in the later slasher movies. But when you look at Spiral, it kind of leaned too heavily on the character development for me, I think, and it distracted from the game because you didn't give a fuck who was getting killed and when.
It actually did try.
Tried too much.
It succeeded, but it tried. Yeah, it really did. We had to care about all these kind of characters. It didn't work.
Yeah. No, I think they leaned too heavily on that. I think it was nearly 70-30, where like the game itself was secondary. It needs to be a 50-50 split. You need to develop the characters that are on the outside of the games, as well as how you have to develop the characters that are, or the contestants or whatever, for lack of a better term, that are inside the game. So you care about the two storylines before they converge. And that's what Saw 1 did cleverly, and that's what Saw 2 did, even to a certain extent, because you cared about Donnie Wahlberg, you cared about him trying to get to his son, but you knew he was a dirty ass cop, and you knew he had his comeuppance comeuppance coming to him. But like it kind of built the characters well, but never distracted from the game, and the game itself never distracted from the characters because it had the balancing act. Whereas later on, it's like it became game dependent, and in this one, it leaned too heavily on the characters and was fleshing out all these bits that we didn't really need to be fleshed out, because you could tell the same story without 5 or 10 minutes of those scenes with Chris Rock and his father, or Chris Rock and his partner, and you can tell these stories without distracting away from the game, but not leaning too heavily on the game. And I think that's I think Squid Game did really well, where it balanced the act between the contestants that were inside the Squid Game.
That's why that was the best thing about Squid Game for me. Everyone thinks it was just the want to murder. Don't get me wrong, it was, but it did actually have characters that I cared about.
Yeah,
it was the guy who projected the idea of being extremely successful. It was the girl who projected that she had absolutely no care for the world, but she had a little brother that she adored.
Yeah,
like that. Like even now, I haven't watched that in a couple of months, but it stays with me.
Yeah,
and this didn't have any of that.
They let you. What they do is they lean on the pressure with the game itself, and then they would let you take a breath, and they'd give you some backstory, and that's what Saw wanted. It was like pressure, 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 release. Pressure, 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 release. And then it slowly built to its climax. And that's what Squid Game did. It was like pressure, 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 release. And then we give you a bit of backstory, let you care about the characters, and then straight away pressure, pressure, pressure. Because like we're going to let you care about them, and then we're going to up the ante every time. And that's what like the original Saw did. We're going to make you care about some people, and then we're going to keep upping the ante in the situation until it hits its breaking point. And that's what a good horror movie does, and a good torture porn movie in the earlier ones, that's what they did. They kind of built the character but never distracted away from the gory aspects. And in just the later ones, I think they weren't as successful because there was a clear imbalance in how they structured their stories.
But again, they knew that fucking Chris Rock wanted in, and I think they literally fell over themselves trying to fucking get it done.
Yeah, 100%, and it just led to a shoddy story. And like, even though Jigsaw itself wasn't good, it tried to ingratiate itself into the previous installments of the franchise, and it kind of understood the franchise it was operating within, something we talk about. But this movie, Spiral, didn't really kind of understand the franchise it was operating in, and it kind of distracted a bit too much. About what was going on was kind of a muddled mess. But like, no, that's Jigsaw and Spiral. But like, we've got a few minutes to burn, and then we're going to get out here. But before we do, I want to ask you about the torture porn subgenre itself. It's offshoots like Hostel and fucking like all the gory shit coming out of like Central Europe.
What's that? Panic Room? What's the one that came out recently? It was on this
Escape Room.
Escape Room. No,
that would be. That's not torture porn.
Well, did you see that? Well, I thought I seen some fairly horrific deaths in it.
That's more survival horror, I think.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll give you, it's the other side of the razor, but
it's more mainstream. Like, I could sit down with an Escape Room with any kind of general horror fan, but to sit down through a Saw franchise, you know what I mean? It's completely different experience.
I'll give it to you. It is the other side of the razor blade, but it is the other side.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so I just think like, what did you like in the early 2000s? Just like the 80s, we had Friday the 13th, we had a Halloween franchise expanded, and then in the 90s we had Scream, we had the Child's Play franchise expanded. Into 2000s, no one could say and no one could deny me that Saw pretty much owned the 2000s, because it was out nearly annually. It was like
the noughties.
Was it noughties? Was it
for you millennials? Yeah,
but so like. It kind of, for a decade there was like 5 or 6, 7 releases, and then it spawned a lot of imitations or similar movies in a similar mold or whatever, like Hostel and shit like that. Do you think we're going to see a resurgence of that kind of torture porn? Because I know it's kind of gone away slowly. I know there's movies like with Martyrs, I think you told me about, and Serbian Film that take it to the nth degree, like these kind of like extremist kind of fucking movies. They're almost like snuff movies. Like, do you think do you think it's plateaued now over the past 10 or so years? We seem to be getting more like we're kind of going back to the classic supernatural kind of horrors, possession, more mainstream horrors having more success, like It, like a Conjuring universe, like Insidious, these kind of things.
Yeah, I do think that there was the Hostels. I think if you wanted to call out, like I remember the Hostel. I remember seeing Saw before Hostel. It came out before Hostel, I believe, probably by all of a year.
Yeah,
and I remember that being one of the film that made me extremely uncomfortable. Really slow, precise, on purpose torture. Like, not like because you did something, but it was on purpose, cutting your eyeball out of your head. It was absolutely awful stuff. but at the same time, I do think that it couldn't have much of a shelf life. At the same time, you knew it was going to make people antsy, and they got as many films out as they could. And then you said you could see the shift that came towards vampires and all this kind of shit that I think came with the early 10s.
Yeah.
Like True Blood and all this kind of stuff. So
adaptations of YA.
Yeah, I do. I just think it was this 5-year span. And I think some of the bigger franchises spurned off, but I do remember this 5 years where it felt like every time you went to the cinema, it was to see something really, really, really uncomfortable and grotesque.
Like. Yeah, like a Human Centipede or something like that, where it's like
exactly.
I am as desensitized as they come. I've seen that movie once. I'm happy enough that I've seen it once. If I watch it again, I'll be like, probably unnecessary. You know what I mean?
You know what? I never felt it necessary to watch it because I knew what I'd be getting in for is something. It's not like I'll watch it, and I've seen lots of them. Martyrs is a film I've seen watch. I'm happy, but I'm just kind of like, I get the concept. I'm not in a rush for it.
Yeah, you know, it's that kind of thing where, as we talked about, the concepts become more and more outlandish because you're trying to replicate this high by inducing more of the same narcotics. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like you want to get the same high from the same way you got Saw.
You need to go further. Yes. Yeah. And it's a good way of putting it. You acclimatise to something that, well, you took one and it was so extreme and you seen God and all that kind of shit. Yeah. And then you say, well, wait, I'm a little bit customised, so maybe if I take two and a half tops. Yeah, and then you're there with 25 of them, and you're in a spiral scenario.
Yeah, it goes from one guy sawing his foot off to 14 people sawing him off, and it turns into a giant mosaic. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
You know, it's kind of like when I watched the Hannibal TV show. I don't know if you can call that torture porn, but like the Hannibal TV show, some of the murder scenes that Hannibal left behind were ridiculously intricate. Like it's.
I didn't see the whole thing, but I remember the one where the woman was sliced into fine layers.
I was literally thinking
and
about
vacuum
that.
packed.
Yeah, and I'm like, come on, dude, how long does that take you to set up? Like, even if you're a genius, just the logistics of it all, it takes so long.
Just the logistics of it all.
Yeah.
My fucking God. Yeah. You're in a fucking police precinct.
Dude, think about it this way.
Evidence room.
Exactly. Like, think about it this way. How hard, it's like a lot more difficult than you think to, like, abduct someone. Just to abduct them. Like, as you said, if a revenge thing, someone did something to a loved one, and you wanted to abduct them. Just to abduct them without anybody seeing you anyone seeing you doing that is difficult unto itself. And nowadays, modern society, right? But to do that and bring them to a pre-arranged trap that you've taken weeks designing, maybe months, and then you took hours, maybe tens, a dozen, maybe dozens of hours setting up some of these traps without being caught. Like, you know what I mean? It just gets
that's so many.
Yeah.
That's so I'd just be sitting there setting up this trap, and I'm in like hour 300 going, what if I just get caught walking up to the
door? And someone goes, what were you doing in there? Nothing. Like,
no, I'm calling the guards. and then you're just
4 years ago you called the guards on me while I set up a trap.
And then you're in police custody, and then they find the house, and it's kind of funny to them.
Yeah.
You know, they think like you thought you were.
Remember in Jigsaw, the girl with her studio apartment is just filled with traps.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, like, it's so stupid.
Like, I get it. You know, like one of the earlier Jigsaw, I guess, saws, and it's the woman taped to the roof, and there's two men of which she's been, like, sleeping with. And the worst thing she was doing was, like, having sex with one guy behind another guy's back.
Yeah.
And then she ended up sawing her in half. Yeah. But like this was in the middle of a public square in like kind of like unbreakable glass, plexiglass, and you're just kind of going, no, dude, just stop. I actually find
you like being penetrated by two men.
There you go. I found Marvel to be more just believable.
Yeah, it's insane. Like I think that's the case. Like, but like. I just think that's the thing about it. It lost its believability, and I think that's why the subgenre itself is not as frequently done or sought after, because once you've seen a half a dozen torture porn movies, you've seen pretty much all of them. It's not a very varied subgenre in the same way that you'd see like a slasher, a paranormal movie, a possession movie, vampire, werewolf, whatever. You can use the same ingredients and tell quite different stories. when you do that. But with torture porn, it comes to the case of how extravagant and how intricate can your story be in terms of how you manipulate people into the torture situation, or when you get them there, how intricate is the trap and the design, and what are the outcomes or consequences from that trap or design in terms of a visual fucking masterpiece or whatever that you're trying to paint or whatever.
I bet you somebody has to say, how much do you think our audience cares at this point?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's no doubt with a Fast and Furious or something that somebody's saying like, oh, what, like a car couldn't get up to like Mach 2 and, you know, be able to like, and be driven and be able to like swerve and avoid things like, can't it though? You know, eventually somebody has to stop caring. Eventually, even somebody who really cares just kind of go, I
think
it does. Like Vin Diesel, because of family, can react 89 times quicker than a human being can.
Vin Diesel's like, I see Elon Musk. You know, he put a car into space. You know, doing that. Car to space. The Diesel's doing that. What a fucking
terrific person Elon
Musk he's like the Diesel is doing that, powered by nothing but family. Family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like he wants electric cars. I give him family power cars. That's what the Diesel does. That's what the Toretto does.
Yeah, it just drives 1,000,000 miles, and every now and again you see Vin Diesel, and he just kind of winks at you.
And just see
family, and then you just go for another 1,000,000 miles.
Yeah, it's like a flux capacitor, family capacitor. But it's weird how many fucking similarities there is between the Saw franchise and the Fast and Furious franchise.
They're bled, and people have said okay. And then they went, okay, because you always have to go bigger.
Imagine that crossover.
Oh, God.
Fast and the Saw and the Furious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? John Kramer, he wanted to mess with my family. And he's like, and he just bumps into
But you did this to my family 10 years ago. Yeah. But that was with a different family.
It goes back to like Fast and Furious 4. And he's like, you were doing a bank heist in Brazil. And your car crushed another car, and that car was related to my cleaner's ex-boyfriend. And now you are now in a car, and I'm going to cook you in that car. It's like, come on, dude, seriously. He's like, how little does the slide have to be for you to do 45 hours of like engineering work? At least 40 hours of engineering work and crafting some of these. You have to get the location, you have to buy that location, make sure nobody comes about. You're going to have to like set up the designs, you're going to have to make the trap, then you're going to have to one by one assemble all these people somehow, get them down to that place without anybody seeing you, and then implement your game in the exact time frame, in the exact fucking order that you wanted to. Otherwise it would make no sense or work not at all. You know what I mean? Like,
imagine you make all those tapes and everything and you're just arrested at the very first hurdle.
You're on the bus and you're like practicing. You're like, so you bumped into me. like, dude, why are you recording there? Oh, it's for my true crime podcast.
yeah. Can I sit in the aisle seat? No. Yeah. You wouldn't let me sit in the aisle seat.
He's like, what's your name? My name is John. John. 30 seconds ago, you were let me say Oh, man, that's fucking good.
But it is like that's only a slight exaggeration of where it got.
Yes,
it is. It's an exaggeration, but it's not as big a one as it should be.
Yeah, because it comes down to a dude getting two fucking stickers wrong that are identical stickers on two X-rays that are like inches apart and look almost identical, and he gets run through the trap, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And they're detrimental results, don't get me wrong. But like, absolutely.
A guy that could have possibly saved hundreds of or dozens of lives as a doctor already before that.
Absolutely, yeah, and infinitely so. And yeah, he was shagging his secretary or whatever, but you don't get to fucking make him chop off limbs.
Yeah, but being fucking president, he shagged his secretary.
Yeah, absolutely. And had his family tied up.
Yeah.
You know, had his family tied up and a guy threatening to murder a little girl. Like, who the fuck? You don't get to take Burl the high ground.
Yeah, we're talking about Jigsaw now. No.
Yeah.
No, but Jigsaw didn't tie. Are you talking about part one? Jigsaw didn't tie.
I was just talking about part one. Sorry, I was talking about. I thought we were talking about that first domino. You know, that first domino.
That was Michael Emerson, who actually tied up that dude's family because Jigsaw was laying on the ground in the bathroom. But so blame Michael Emerson, you know, who's actually awesome in Lost and Persons of Interest. But like, I just think it's gone to a case now of the torture porn subgenre because of its lack of variety in terms of what it can tell as a story. I think it's kind of just plateaued over the last 5 or 10 years, and people don't really pay it as much attention. And it's kind of even gone to the case in a lot of horror communities when you post about that extreme stuff. I've seen people in horror groups, and there's like big discussions about it, and they kind of take that shit down. So, like, even though I'm completely open, and I think everybody should be completely open to all forms of horror and all forms of genres that they like to indulge in, I think that it's come to a case where people are like, it's so same-ish. It's not about the blood, guts, and gore anymore. It's about the same-ishness of your story. Yes. And all you're going to do is you're just going to keep upping the ante to a case of we don't care. And I think that's the problem with a lot of torture porn.
Because you have the property, you have the intellectual property, so you use it. And that's
use it or lose it a lot of the times it rates.
Yeah, and quite often. Yeah. But like, there's definitely no fear of them not using it. And it's just shit. Can we really get an 11? Like, Spiral was supposed to go really, really well. And that could have spawned a young
could have spiraled.
Jigsaw. Could have spawned a young kind of Jigsaw character that you could have used for 10 more years. And why not? You know, like, he could have been like out to take on corrupt police and all this kind of jazz. But again, it was just bleeding it. No, there's no limit to what they'll fucking bleed. It has to really, really die. Like, die a death. Although Spiral kind of did die a death, so I don't know what the future holds, but I would be surprised if we don't see a follow-up, because I'm sure it meant bank. I didn't check, but I'm sure it did.
I think, it's just a case now with Spawn, or Saw, so I was thinking Spawn for some reason. But I think it's a case of Saw now that you're gotten so far away from the original antagonist, John Kramer, that any antagonist you introduce now, unless they carry over to a second, third, fourth film, we're just not going to give a fuck. You're like, oh, you're the monster of the week. That's all it is. And that's what Saw has become, a monster of the week franchise. It's got its links to its original killer, John Kramer, Jigsaw. Its links to him are becoming more and more tenuous, and it's in the sense that you have to tell a 10-year-old story as your side story in Jigsaw, just to have him involved. And it's kind of a case that, like, you killed off your serial killer in a way that you couldn't bring him back, really. So now you're just clutching at straws to keep including them into your narratives. And that's why Saw is not going to age in the same way as a Halloween or a Hellraiser or anything, because unless you reboot the franchise entirely, and that means replacing Tobin Bell as John Kramer, and you start all together again, like a complete reboot in maybe 5 or 10 years, maybe you could do that with Saw and start over for a new audience. But I just think it's a case of, like, many franchises.
You rebooted a franchise.
Well, I think it's a case of, like, it's aging out of existence, and like a lot of horror franchises. And I think we just need to leave some of these where they are and just start over with new franchises, because there's a lot of shit out there that hasn't been made yet, like, you know. And it's a kind of a case of that, where with torture porn as a subgenre in itself within horror, that it itself is kind of aged out of existence. That kind of, especially nowadays when you're in this kind of, like, very PC woke environment, that it doesn't have a place in the mainstream for a lot of people. But for us in general as horror fans, it's kind of aged out of existence for us, because it's all hack. We've seen it done before, and we've seen it done really well when it was done well, and now it's just, you're not really emulating what you're trying to do. It's more like cheap imitation. And I think that's the reason torture porn now is kind of plateaued, and we're seeing lots of other subgenres kind of what's the word I'm looking for, kind of do well, or whatever, for lack of a better term. They're doing well and they're succeeding because they have more variety contained within their subgenres, and that's why I think torture porn is kind of plateaued and it's aging out of existence.
Yeah, I think it is. I think, though, obviously it relies so much on a shock factor. If you completely take away that shock factor, if, like, we're expecting it so much, then of course.
It's like the first time you play GTA and you knock someone down, you're like, oh my god, that's crazy. And then, like, GTA 5, you're plowing into, like, fucking fields of people, and, like, I felt nothing. You know, that kind of thing, like, you know. So
absolutely, like Armageddon and stuff. It's all relevant.
Yeah,
it can only take us from where you left us.
Exactly. So I think, like, when it's just a clear disconnect now from believability and what you're seeing on screen, and it's become cartoonish. and it's lost that shock factor, lost that gore because it's become humorable or laughable. And when you watch something like that, you can't be engrossed by it or even grossed by it. It doesn't even make you gross out anymore. You're just kind of laughing it off. You're like, as we did, like a lot of those traps were horrific in nature in terms of the visual aspects that they were trying to convey, but we just laughed them off because they were so over the top. You know what I mean? Like there was nothing funny about that dude getting spiraled into the blender and getting shot out, but because it was a 20-foot blender ran by the exact motor that was used to kill that dude's nephew, it's so fucking tenuous, it's pathetic. It's just so like the fact that I had to say it in so many sentences. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just shows that the effort that was put into it was just like so like grasping at straws. How can we link this to this? His nephew, this cousin, this, and it's just after a while, because of the extravagant nature of the torture sequences or the situations that have to get him into these torture sequences, it's just so fucking unbelievable that it becomes like cartoonish, and that's where you lose me, and that's where you lose a lot of people, like, you know.
And if you can make something so shocking and use the words like cartoonish, then you're done.
Yeah.
And at that point, even like, you know, the person who's trying to bleed it the most kind of goes, fuck, I think we're done.
Yeah, and I think that's the case.
We can run people through like mincers to like literally just throw 25 people in a blender. Shit, they don't care. They don't fucking care.
That's the thing. Like, you know, you're just throwing in. It's like
we were fatigued by Spiral.
Yeah, it's like Noel, you made Spiral. I'm like, oh, Noel made Saw 4. I watched it. He killed 22 people by using the saw. Guess what I'm going to do? 22 saws, 98 people, and then they're going to, you know, that kind of thing.
All it ever was.
Yeah,
and that's like
that's
not
what it became.
A premise. That's not writing.
Yeah.
You can kill one person. You can kill no people.
Yeah.
A lot better than that.
It's like, and it begun with Saw 2 as well. It's like, oh, two guys in a room, and we're going to have lots of people in a house. You know what I mean? And that little incremental, like, you know, it's like Fast and Furious again. It's like, oh, this is little increments, and all of a sudden, all those little increments, because were previously believable, the massive increments that you start doing become utterly believable because of the world you built in the background behind those fucking things, and that's when it becomes insane. And I think that's the reason the Saw franchise and torture porn and law has just gone off the rails, because of the little incremental advances that it made to try and make a one-upmanship, that eventually those increments became huge, and then all of a sudden I'm losing interest. You know, that kind of thing. Like, so I just think that's what happened with torture porn, and that's what happened with the Saw franchise, that it just ran out of ideas, and it's like bigger is better, more intricate, and it just became completely unbelievable, because I could believe Saw 1 and 2 and maybe 3. But as it went along, I didn't give a fuck.
Oh yeah, you were out. You checked out.
Yeah.
And it didn't even matter how hard they tried after that. They had lost you.
It's like the harder they tried, the less the results.
But when they tried to revamp it with Spiral, they made me just for a moment believe. And I think that's why I'm so aggressive towards it.
Yeah.
Jesus, what an aggressively bad film, like.
Yeah, it was just such a non-plus movie, and I think it just shows...
Yeah, actually, that's it. It was so non-plus.
Yeah, and I just think that it shows, again, maybe it was less the movie's fault, maybe it was the genre it was operating within, the subgenre of torture porn, that we were just like, we've seen this movie before, and we've seen it done better, and I can still watch it, and it's only 10 or 15 years old. Not a big deal. It's not like I'm plunging back in the 1950s, running through my archives to try to find something that's going to emulate Spiral. I can watch Saw. You know what I mean? I watched Saw was made in the past 20 years, give or take, and it's a far superior movie, and it's far more basic, and it tells a far better story. And that's the problem with these franchises, that the originals, a lot of these are fucking only 20 years old. So people are like, meh, that's shit, I'm going to go back and watch the original over and over and over again. And that's why these franchises where the originals become classics, but a lot of the sequels become...
They didn't know what they had. It's always the same with these things. Nobody had a long view for this. Because they didn't realise how good it actually was.
Yeah, or they just didn't understand what made it special. You know, that kind of thing. Like, they just had a misunderstanding of the source material. And, like, unfortunately, I think when James Wan, when he went away from the franchise, and I think Lee Wannell, I'm not sure if he wrote some of the later ones, but he wrote some of the sequels. I think it was better when they were attached, because they were the original creators. Lee Wannell, and James Wan have gone on and created the Insidious universe, the Conjuring universe. Like, James Wan directed Aquaman, fantastic storyteller. And same with Lee Wannell, he's a great writer, great horror storyteller. And I think once they kind of exit stage left to go concentrate on other things, the franchise weakened. And then you've seen all these cheap knockoffs pop up left, right, and centre, and because they weren't attached, obviously, that they have forgot what the original elements of these made these stories cool or made these stories unique for a few years there. And then you just had this, snowball effect that the more of the movies we got, the more ridiculous they became and the less interest they garnered.
Yeah.
So
what a fucking... It just became bombastic, man.
Yeah.
That's it. It just became bombastic.
So, like...
And without the semi-fantastic.
So, before I let you get the fuck out of here, what do you think is the future for torture porn? Do you think we're going to see a resurgence, or do you think people are just...
I think it needs a break, and I don't know what the future is, so I'm just going to say what I think it needs is a break and a fresh start. And Saw is not the be-all and end-all, no more than Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers is. It's not. It's a huge fucking property, but it's not the be-all and end-all, especially when the concept is...
You're talking billions of dollars for a billion-dollar franchise.
Exactly. You're talking vengeance, or you're talking... high concept vengeance, essentially, and you can take that to so many places. So I do think it needs to the greed needs to stop for like a second. Spiral was a disaster, and then just take a step back, and then when I do think what goes around comes around. I do think it circles back, but I think it needs time to do that. 100%.
And do you think it will, like, what do you think we might see a resurgence in the same way that the kind of woke culture PC is kind of being shed a little bit? Well, in certain circles.
Yeah, I think, maybe just like a nice diverse
cast. Like a fuck you kind of thing, like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Like a counterculture.
A counterculture, and that always springs up.
Yeah.
But I do. I think there's more to be seen, but I think I would love if the Saw franchise was put to bed. I would love it.
Yeah, and I would love a lot of these franchises to be put to bed and let's see some new IP. Like that's what I would like. And I think
but you have a property, and if you can slap the word Saw or Jigsaw,
it makes it to 150 million or something.
That's it, and it's just worth more. You could put every penny into a film that's like the same concept and not have the name. And unfortunately, it's like buying a pair of fucking jeans that doesn't say Levi.
And the thing is,
somebody slaps Levi on it, and it's worth more.
No matter how much we complain, if they release another Saw, we'll probably go and see it. Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
admitting it.
Yeah,
I hate admitting it. Yeah,
but they're right.
There you go. That's where we are, man.
Like the way I complained about Halloween H14, Halloween Kills. Still went to see both of them in the cinema, and I'm going to go see Halloween Ends. Like, so hopefully it ends. But like, So I just think I just think I'm with you. Maybe take a break from the subgenre. Come back in a few years when maybe it's a bit more palatable for some people, and you might see a few new ideas in a similar vein, and we might get to see a resurgence of a Saw franchise, or maybe a Hostel franchise, or we might get to see a brand new franchise that operates in a similar way or whatever. I don't know, but like I just think like right now it's lacking in originality, and I'm with you. Give it a break and let's just enjoy all this other cool shit that we're getting to see right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, cool. So we get the fuck out here because I'm one tired motherfucker.
All right, cool, I'm one hungry one.
All right, cool, folks. That was Invasion of the Polly Snatchers. I'm your host, Vincent Green.
I'm your host, Noel John Toohey.
We got Karen Mack in the back, and that was Jigsaw, Spiral, and torture porn in general. Whatever the fuck. All right, Noel. See you next time, motherfucker. Peace.